This is The Process Shot. I'm Michael. I'm stuck in a haunted movie theater, and this film reminds me that hauntings usually involve ghosts, which makes me realize how boring it can be around here. We Have a Ghost is a new horror comedy from director Christopher Landon, following a teenage boy named Kevin, his family, and the house they've moved into, and Ernest, the ghost that is living in their attic. When a video of Ernest goes viral, the family sees massive attention, much to Kevin's dismay since he had not only met Ernest first, but also became friends with him. While his father would rather capitalize on the spectacle, Kevin wants to help Ernest find closure and move on, since that's how ghosts work. Either way, when words of Ernest's existence finds its way to the government, they decide to bring him in for examination, pushing Kevin's search for the truth to an extreme. Extreme is definitely applicable to that whole part of the story. Like most things in life, when the government gets involved, everything starts to get a bit overblown and somewhat unnecessary. The tone of the story gets pretty upended once they become involved, moving from a horror comedy with coming-of-age underpinnings to an action comedy with an unusual amount of production money behind it. It eventually comes back around to the more grounded family storyline, but by doing so, it kind of shows how the government angle is relatively pointless and probably could have been cut out without taking away from the core narrative. Then again, that story is pretty basic, or at least it only has basic character development and archetypes that makes their conflict rather predictable. If you've seen father-son disagreements in movies before, you'll know how this one plays out. I will say that this story does at least have a good grasp on making itself a modern ghost story, which I can assume is what they wanted to be first and foremost. For example, pretty much every step of the way, people are filming everything they see on camera with their smartphones, especially when it comes to Ernest and his ghostly activities. It's not only a play on one modern horror movie trope, but it's integrated well enough into the story and, for the most part, pushes everything along from scene to scene. On the other hand, it does lead into a plot hole in how much of the movie's troubles could have been avoided if Ernest had the foresight to remain invisible whenever doing anything important or incriminating. At the very least, they could have explicitly stated he had little control over his visibility or something like that. Anyways, like I said before, this movie has a lot of production money going into it, and it does a good job putting it to use, even if it doesn't really need to. The story spreads itself out over several locations, and when it does, it often pushes them to their narrative limits, with large crowds of people and a few chase scenes, and eventually actual stunt work. There are even some props or settings that verge on science fiction for some reason. Again, those sorts of elements shift the film's tone in a weird direction, though the technical elements do follow suit well enough. It still feels a bit odd in how it shifts everything from being more grounded to spectacle-driven, but the transition is at least smoothed out by consistent cinematography and editing, save maybe for how it managed to fill up nearly 2 hours of runtime when it probably could have been a good chunk less. But that's just me. Ultimately, I don't have much to talk about when it comes to the technical side of things here. I suppose it's better than not having anything nice to say at all, but there's still a lack of a visionary style, which I feel would have made this movie more interesting in the end. As it is, it comes through more like a film that wants to put a contemporary spin on an old classic, but for every step forward, it takes 2 steps back and plays it all safe. Or at least plays it out in a familiar manner with no risks to its name. We Have a Ghost, Christopher Landon, 2023. 2 stars. I wouldn't really recommend seeing it, even if it does have its positives. That's it for this review. If you liked it, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a comment. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews. Oh, another thing against this movie, it's got a TikTok montage. Just a straight up clip show. I know it's a modern ghost story, but it doesn't need to be that modern, does it?